In the late 2nd millennium BC, as New Kingdom Egypt unraveled under foreign invasions and internal strife, the Nubian regions to its south seized an unprecedented opportunity. By around 1070 BC, Egyptian control beyond the First Cataract collapsed, and local Kushite elites, long incorporated into Egypt's military and religious institutions, reasserted their autonomy. They established their capital at Napata, situated near the sacred Jebel Barkal promontory, where the cliff face bore a triangular peak believed to mirror the crown of Amun. This choice of site marked both a return to indigenous cultural roots and a conscious appropriation of Egyptian sacred geography. Napatan society coalesced around a warrior aristocracy drawn from local clans, sometimes referred to in Egyptian texts as Kush. These leaders leveraged their long service in pharaonic armies to master chariotry, archery, and fortification techniques, while retaining distinctive Nubian craft traditions. Under their aegis, Napata grew into a fortified city with mud brick walls, granaries, and a palace precinct overlooking the Nile's west bank. Temples to Amun at Jebel Barkal and Napata itself embodied a deliberate syncretism. Kushite rulers revived Egyptian cultic architecture while infusing rituals with Nubian deities like Apedemak, the lion-head war god, signaling an emerging hybrid theology. By approximately around 900 BC, Napata's rulers had coalesced into a hereditary kingship. Titles such as King of Kush and Upper Egypt begin to appear on stelae, reflecting aspirations not only to regional hegemony, but also to restore the glories of New Kingdom Egypt. Early monuments, inscribed in Egyptian hieroglyphs, detail military campaigns into the desert oases and seasonal raids into Upper Egypt, primarily aimed at securing gold, ivory, ebony, and exotic animal skins. These luxury goods funded the elaboration of Napatan temples and funerary cults, attracting artisans from both Nubia and Egypt. Trade networks flourished under Napata's protection. Caravans rolled south toward the savanna grasslands and beyond to Central Africa, exchanging Nile-silted grains and fine pottery for ostrich feathers, gum arabic, and incised ivory. Meanwhile, riverine traffic ferried goods north to Egyptian and Levantine merchants. Napata's prosperity thus rested on bridging the Saharan fringe and Mediterranean economies. The city's strategic location also enabled control of the camel routes that skirted the Nile's cataracts, laying groundwork for trans-Saharan commerce that would flourish centuries later at Meroë. Administratively, Napatan rulers adapted Egyptian bureaucratic models. Titles such as God's Son of Amun underscored the king's dual religious and political authority. Royal scribes employed hieratic script on papyri and ostraca to record tribute, grain allocations, and land grants to the Temple of Amun, ensuring a stable revenue base for both state and cult. Judicial affairs, however, appear to have remained largely in the hands of local Nubian elders, blending clan-based adjudication with palace oversight. Mortuary practices at Napata reveal the formation of a distinct Kushite elite identity. Royal tombs, small steep-sided pyramids erected on the desert's edge, echo Egyptian prototypes at Saqqara, yet exhibit markedly different proportions and funerary assemblages. Tomb goods include Nubian-style faience vessels, imported Egyptian scarabs, and finely carved ivory gaming pieces, reflecting a cosmopolitan court culture. Funerary texts, inscribed in hieroglyphs and later in a local script, invoke both Amun and native mountain spirits, reinforcing the king's role as mediator between worlds. By 800 BC, the foundational phase at Napata had solidified a resilient Nubian state. Its kings stood ready to intervene in the political vacuum of Egypt itself, an ambition realized with the establishment of the 25th dynasty just a century later. Yet even in this formative era, Napata's rulers laid critical pillars of Kushite power: mastery of military technology, integration of Egyptian religious legitimacy, reliance on long-distance trade, and the cultivation of a unique cultural identity. These innovations set the stage for Kush to emerge not merely as Egypt's neighbor, but as its equal and, at times, its sovereign. In the mid-8th century BC, Egypt's third intermediate period, marred by division between Tannite and Theban dynasts, left the Nile Valley ripe for intervention. From their stronghold at Napata, Kushite kings saw an opportunity to reunify Egypt under a revitalized pharaonic model. Kashta, the first Napatan ruler to assert authority north of the First Cataract, installed himself as king of Upper and Lower Egypt, forging marital ties with Theban priestly lines. His successor, Piye, launched a full-scale campaign in approximately 728 BC, recording his victories in the Victory Stela of Jebel Barkal. Marching down the Nile with chariots, infantry, and siege crews, Piye overcame local rulers, who capitulated before his divine mandate as son of Amun. By restoring temple endowments and reviving the Akita New Year festival at Memphis, he cast himself both warrior king and God's heir. Piye's successor, Shabaka, consolidated Kushite power through administrative reforms. He standardized titulary, adopting Egyptian praenomen and nomen, and appointed loyal Nubian princes as provincial governors in Memphis, Thebes, and the Delta. Shabaka's reign saw the composition of the Shabaka stone, a hieroglyphic monolith preserving Memphite theological texts, underscoring Kush's role as Egypt's religious custodian. Under Taharqa, the 25th dynasty reached its zenith. His armies repelled Assyrian invasions led by Esarhaddon and Ashurbanipal, fought pitched battles at Thebes and Elephantine, and sponsored extensive building projects. Pylon temples at Karnak and the elegant kiosks at Philae. Monumental obelisks bearing Taharqa's cartouches still stand in Karnak and Naga, testament to Kushite architectural ambition. Yet Assyrian pressure proved relentless. In 667 BC, Esarhaddon sacked Thebes, and although the Kushite court briefly reasserted control under Tantamani, by 656 BC, Egyptian nobles, tired of war and religious upheaval, invited Psamtik I of Sais to rule as a vassal. The Kushite pharaohs withdrew to Napata, ending 2 generations of Nubian rule over Egypt. Nevertheless, their legacy endured in temple art, priestly lineages, and the re-enthronement of Amun's worship at Karnak. The Napatan pharaohs demonstrated that Kushite ambition, combined with Egyptian religious legitimacy, could reunify and govern the Nile Valley, setting a powerful precedent for later Meroitic resurgence. After their expulsion from Egypt, Kushite royalty refocused their energies on the southern realm, gradually shifting the political center from Napata to Meroë. Situated some 500 kilometers downstream on a fertile alluvial plain, Meroë offered timber from adjacent savanna woodlands, access to rich iron ore deposits in the nearby hills, and control of upstream trade routes into Central Africa. By approximately 600 BC, early Meroitic rulers such as Nastasen and Anlamani had begun constructing the first royal pyramids at Meroë's west and east cemeteries. The pyramids were smaller than Napatan prototypes, but marking a new funerary tradition distinct to the region. Economically, Meroë evolved into an iron production powerhouse. Archaeological surveys revealed dozens of bloomery furnaces, some capable of yielding hundreds of kilograms of wrought iron per firing, situated near the Iron Mountain of the Butana region. Skilled blacksmiths fashioned tools, spearheads, and agricultural implements that were exported northward, underpinning both local prosperity and lucrative trade with Egypt, the Red Sea ports, and across the Arabian Peninsula. Caravans carried ebony, ivory, and ostrich feathers from deep within Africa to Meroë, while returning with Greek wine, Mediterranean beads, and Egyptian grain. Culturally, the Meroitic kingdom synthesized Napatan royal traditions with indigenous motifs. Royal inscriptions in the emerging Meroitic script, derived from Egyptian Demotic but written left to right, celebrate military victories over nomadic tribes like the Blemis and Bij, and divine sanction by lioness goddess Apedemak. Queens such as Amon-Irenas appear on temple reliefs at Musaweret Sufra, leading war councils, evidence of a potent female rulership tradition unique to Meroë. Temple building flourished. Vast brick complexes at Naka and Musaweret include lion-crowned gateways and columned halls, echoing Egyptian hypostyle architecture, yet incorporating iconic Kushite frontal reliefs. At Meroë itself, the dedication of shrines to Amun of Napata, to Isis, and to locally venerated Nile deities underscores religious continuity even as political gravity shifted. By the turn of the era, Meroë had emerged as a dynamic, self-sustaining center of trade, metallurgy, and syncretic culture, transforming Kush from an Egyptian client kingdom into an African power whose influence radiated north into Egypt and east across the Red Sea. In the first 3 centuries AD, Meroë enjoyed its greatest prosperity. Kings such as Archimenika and Amenikabel presided over an empire profiting from iron exports to Rome's provinces in Egypt and Arabia. The so-called Meroitic smelting grounds near Hammurabi and Saras processed vast quantities of ore, and archaeological evidence such as Roman amphora shards and ostraca with Latin graffiti attests to direct trading links with Mediterranean merchants. Meroitic artisans perfected hydraulic dams on minor Nile tributaries, enhancing irrigation for cotton and sorghum cultivation. Royal estates outside Meroë produced fine textiles, such as linen dyed with madder and cotton from Nubian cottonwoods, which became status symbols in palaces from Alexandria to Petra. Monumentally, over 100 pyramids rose on Meroë cemeteries, steeper and more slender than Egyptian precedents, and paired with burial chapels rich in wall paintings depicting Meroitic funerary rites. Textual graffiti in Meroitic script on palace walls at Meroë and at sites like Wad Ban Naga record royal lists and religious hymns. Politically, Meroë maintained a delicate balance between centralized authority, exercised by the king and kandakes, and regional governors. This flexibility allowed the kingdom to weather occasional raids by nomads and to negotiate treaties with Rome. A known peace embassy in AD 14 to 17 secured free navigation of the Nile. Culturally, Meroë synthesized Egyptian, Hellenistic, and sub-Saharan elements. Reliefs in the Temple of Apedemak at Napata depict Greek-style Corinthian capitals, while jewelry in royal tombs includes local carnelian and Mediterranean glass beads. The kingdom's capital became a magnet for scholars and monks. 4th century accounts mention Christian missionaries arriving just before Meroë's decline, illustrating its role as an intellectual crossroads. Meroë's rulers developed one of Africa's earliest indigenous writing systems. The Meroitic alphabetic script, in both hieroglyphic and cursive forms, used to record royal decrees, dedicatory inscriptions, and legal codices. Though partially undeciphered today, studies of bilingual temple stele have begun to unlock administrative records showing land grants, priestly salaries, and ritual calendars. Divine kingship in Meroë fused Napata and Amun ideology with local cults. Kings were identified as beloved of Amun of Napata. Their unique front-facing statuary, which showed bald-headed rulers wearing double crowns, reflects distinctly Meroitic royal imagery. Queens often bore titles like Mistress of Meroë and Lady of Kush, and temple reliefs portray queens making libations to Amun and Apedemak, signaling joint male-female rulership that reinforced dynastic continuity. Temples honored a pantheon including Egyptian deities, indigenous gods, and local river spirits. Priesthoods held significant tracts of land and operated granaries, weaving together cultic and economic power. Annual festivals combined Nile fertility rites with Nubian harvest ceremonies, highlighting Meroë's unique theological synthesis. Meroë's economic lifeblood was its integration into Afro-Eurasian trade. Caravans conducted annual expeditions across the eastern desert to the Red Sea ports of Berenice Troglodytica and Luk-Kom, reaching Arabia Felix for frankincense and myrrh. Meroitic coins have been found in southern Arabia. Roman sources record a Meroitic embassy to Nero in AD 62, negotiating grain shipments and securing military alliances against Blemian nomads. In turn, Roman merchants established factories at Aswan and Khazar Ibrim, trading Mediterranean wine, olive oil, and ceramics for Nubian gold and ivory. Diplomatic marriages also forged links. Inscriptions mention a Roman consul's daughter marrying a Meroitic prince, illustrating intercultural elite networks. Despite occasional skirmishes over desert grazing rights, Meroë remained in general accord with Rome until the 3rd century AD, its geopolitical savvy allowing independence alongside immense empires. From the 3rd century AD, Meroë faced mounting challenges. The rise of the Kingdom of Aksum in highland Ethiopia diverted Red Sea trade, diminishing revenue. Concurrently, climate data indicates a reduction in Nile inundation and increased desertification around Meroë, reducing pasture and crop yields. Politically, royal succession became fraught. Competing branches under queens such as Amanishakheto and Amanitor engaged in palace coups, steely record multiple brief reigns and purges of rival factions. Corvée demands on peasant villages and temple estates provoked local revolts, documented in Ostraca from Khazar Ibrim complaining of excessive labor drafts for dam repairs. Artisans' potteries show declining quality and simplified motifs, reflecting reduced state sponsorship. The defection of Nubian tribes such as the Beja cut internal communications, and once vibrant iron workshops near the Butana were abandoned as ore deposits were exhausted or trade routes fell silent. By the mid-3rd century AD, the Kingdom of Aksum had consolidated control of the Ethiopian plateau and established ports at Adulis, drawing Meroë's traditional trade partners. Aksumite coins found at Meroë bear the image of King Indubis, indicating both competition and economic intrusion. Military conflicts, attested in stump walls and arrow injuries on skeletal remains, erupted along Meroë's northern border. Strategy shifting northward, Meroë's rulers failed to muster effective responses as Roman garrisons evacuated southern Egypt under Diocletian, leaving the region open. Around AD 350, archaeological layers at Meroë's royal cemetery show widespread burning of palaces and temples. Pottery kilns collapsed, and dwellings were abandoned en masse. Scholarly consensus suggests that combined pressures such as economic decline, environmental degradation, and military defeat rendered the city unsustainable. Meroë's population dispersed into smaller Nubian polities, some moving south into the Jazira, others becoming part of Aksum's growing sphere. Thus concluded a nearly 15th-century epoch of Nubian power, one that began under Napatan kings reclaiming Egypt and ended under Meroitic monarchs whose culture bridged Africa and the Mediterranean. Though the Kingdom of Kush faded, its legacies in metallurgy, script, and dual-gendered kingship persisted in later Nubian and Ethiopian states. Thank you for joining Ancient Odyssey on this epic journey through the Kingdom of Kush. From its Napatan foundations and brief rule over Egypt, through the glittering heights of Meroë's iron and pyramid-building heyday, to its twilight under Aksumite ascendancy, we've traced how Nubian rulers blended Egyptian traditions with African innovation, forging a civilization that endured for a millennium and a half. If you enjoyed diving into Kush's hidden chapters, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more voyages into the world's ancient empires. Until our next Odyssey, stay curious, stay bold, and keep uncovering history's enduring wonders.